Hi there, my name is Chuks Okereke from the Department of Geography and Environmental Science at the University of Reading in the UK. It is with immense pleasure that I introduce you this recently published book that I have done with my colleague, Dr. Patricia Agupusi at Brown University in USA, which we entitled Homegrown Development in Africa, Reality or Illusion. For the first time in a long period, Africa is receiving global attention, not because of war, tribal conflict, or poverty and hunger, but because of the unprecedented economic performance that it has been recording. And this is because over the past 2 decades, Africa has been recording strong economic growth, with about 1/3 of sub-Saharan Africa recording a growth of about 6 to 8%. And about 40% of the countries recording a growth of average 3 to 5%. This surge in economic growth performance has reinvigorated the idea that Africa has turned a corner, that Africa is making a fundamental change in its economic fortune, and that the general way in which development is planned and implemented is fundamentally changed in Africa. Crucially, this impressive growth in Africa has occurred at a time that both African leaders like Thabo Mbeki, President Obasanjo of Nigeria, and their development partners, for example, the World Bank and IMF, are all talking of the idea of African ownership of their development strategies. So across the spectrum, there is a widespread feeling that the time has come for African government to retake full ownership of their national development agenda, to drive their national economic, political, and social destiny. But the crucial question here is, to what extent is the development patterns that we are seeing in Africa really sustainable? What is the extent of the depth of the transformation, the structural transformation that is occurring in Africa, and how sustainable is this? This is the question that this book seeks to address. What is curious is that despite the rising talk of African solutions to African problems, homegrown development strategies, African ownership of their development agenda, we find little or no academic work that have examined the content and effectiveness of African homegrown development strategies. This book that we've recently published is the first ever attempt there is to critically evaluate the quality of homegrown development strategies in Africa and their effectiveness. And what we find is that whilst there has been a lot of progress and effort towards self-reliant development efforts in Africa, a lot of the development agenda or strategies in Africa is still driven by external strategies, external agents, and has external character. This is very, very interesting, because what it shows is that the transformation that is happening in Africa today may not be truly entrenched. What we have done is to examine these growth strategies using clearly worked out indicators, such as the extent of policy ownership, the extent of public participation, the extent to which the economies are diversified, and the extent to which local imperatives or conditions have been taken into account in the design and the implementation of these strategies. Africa is truly at a crossroad in its development history, with unprecedented economic growth coexisting side by side with widespread poverty and inequality. The decisions that African governments take in the next 4 or 5 years will really determine whether Africa is going to go on to become a global economic giant, or whether they will return to the dark ages of low economic growth. What we have done in this book, in addition to the in-depth analysis of the strategies and their effectiveness, is also to offer a set of recommendations that African governments can use together with their international development partners to work out how to really make this transformation a bit more sustainable and to increase the prospects of economic growth and true transformation, prosperity and resilience in Africa. So I strongly recommend this book to you. I encourage you to read it, write to me, comment on it, email me, let me know your comments and your questions. I'll be looking forward to engaging with you. Thank you very much.